Marvellous work, team. Thank you so much. Now, the third leg of the trifecta on community is thriving communities.
Right, and let me just introduce my
different team
colleagues, Elizabeth Fitton-Higgins and Emily Burns, who've done the work on this one. And in a way, this perhaps would have been better framed. This one had come before, but never mind. You know, this will make TAPS the other part of the puzzle. So, Elizabeth.
Right, good afternoon, councillors. So we are here today to give you an update on the Thriving Communities Action Plan and the status report that we put together on it. And we also want to talk through our recommendations for improving the delivery and uptake of the plan so that we can improve outcomes for our communities. And as quite rightly said, it probably would have been a good framework to start off with, but at the same time I actually feel it's quite nice after hearing the two discussions going before us that this is actually a bit of pulling together the different threads and seeing how that actually fits into one of our key strategic documents. Cool. So you saw this slide already. My colleague Ben talked you through this. Just to show you where the Thriving Communities Action Plan sits underneath the Auckland Plan, the renewed Auckland Plan. And also this was one of the key reasons that we actually wanted to do a status update of the Thriving Communities Action Plan, is given the fact that we've got a new Auckland Plan with lots of new outcomes, and we've also had quite a range of strategic initiatives across the council, such as the organisational strategy, empowered communities approach, which we talked about earlier on, and also the enabling council, which are all focused at improving the way we work with our communities and how we consult and engage with them. So because of all those changes, we thought this was a perfect time to actually look at where Thriving Communities is up to, what issues there have been in operationalising the plan, and to also then propose the number of potential improvements for the future of the plan. So we did a stock take and talked to lots of staff and local board people around Thriving Communities and what their feedback was on the plan. And I'll just talk you through the key findings of the status report. So across the board, which was fantastic to hear, there's a real recognition that the plan has significant value and has had quite a significant impact across various areas across council. It's seen as a useful framework for creating an enabling council, a blueprint for council staff to empower its local communities. And it's really made a tangible impact on certain council groups and initiatives. The council is making really good progress against a number of actions in the action plan. We've really delivered on some of them. So, for instance, the Community Facilities Network Plan has been delivered. We've done a community grants policy, which was one of the recommendations in the plan. And we've also introduced the living wage, which is fantastic. We're definitely working in more community-centric ways, but there's also recognition that this should be more widespread. There's been a positive shift in the council's approach, and especially you can see this in the way that we consult and engage with our communities. You've heard facility partnerships policy, so we've done lots of engagement through that, and also the way we engage with communities and help them shape spatial priority areas. Place-based and community-led approaches, such as introduced through the Community Empowerment Unit and the Southern Initiative, are delivering significant change in communities. This delivery is aligned with Thriving Communities, but we also have to recognise that it's not necessarily being driven by Thriving Communities. And also the community-led ways of working, and I think Richard was talking about that earlier on, are not consistently applied across council family. So yes, there are pockets of really good practice, but we're not necessarily doing it everywhere. And also we're not necessarily making the most of sharing the learnings from good and emerging practice across council. There's also a sense of lack of leadership and wider awareness of the plan. Partially that's just the case, you know, in a large organisation, lots of staff turnover, lots of different areas of council. So having awareness of all the key policies is sometimes difficult. But Thriving Communities is such a key document for us that really needs improving. We're not always clear also about the impact that we're making and how to effectively measure the outcomes that we're achieving. Evaluating policies is always tricky, but that is something that we really should be focusing on. And we also think that, given the new Auckland Plan, there's an opportunity to focus on improving the outcomes for those most in need, which is a key theme that's come out and a key directive that we have. There's also been some new and emerging issues since Thriving Communities Action Plan was adopted. So, for instance, housing obviously is such a big issue now across the city. Diversity is becoming more and more of a talking point, and Tina's work earlier spoke to that very clearly. So this is definitely a key impetus for us to look at what we can do next with Thriving Communities. So, the improvement areas that we recommend, there are 4 of them. First of all, given the findings from the status report, we think that we should do more around building leadership for the plan and better promote, communicate and socialise it. We want to create leadership champions to help drive delivery of the plan, improve oversight of it, socialise it more across the organisation and make it simpler and more accessible for staff to use and refer to. The second area of improvement is to target delivery of actions and interventions to achieving Auckland Plan outcomes, especially focusing on those most in need. So we want to update the Thriving Community Action Plan to give effect to the new Auckland Plan outcomes and other strategic initiatives that have taken part across the council to date. We also want to do more around developing further place-based interventions and taking more of a community-centric approach more consistently in the work that we do. We want to therefore explore the merits of replicating approaches such as the Southern Initiative in other areas of high need, and that's something that's also been discussed in the long-term plan. Thirdly, we want to further embed community-led ways of working across council family. We want to support and deliver the Enabling Council programme, which is very much around the way council works internally to engage with its external communities. So that whole getting out of the way so that communities can achieve their aspirations and work towards solving their problems and addressing their needs. We want to showcase good and emerging practice, and we want to evidence the benefits of working in this particular way. And we want to be clear around the links between strategic plans and other initiatives, so that everybody understands what we're working towards collectively. And fourthly, we want to improve evaluation of the Thriving Communities Action Plan. So we want to develop an evaluation framework. We want to underpin the plan with a clear evidence base. A lot of thinking went into the original Thriving Communities Action Plan, but some of that has kind of got lost in the annals of history, and we want to be really clear around that evidence base. We want to establish a regular monitoring process, again, with that focus on driving delivery in this area. And we want to learn from what is working, share promising and emerging practice, and look at opportunities to scale and replicate elsewhere.
Okay. Okay. So, questions, comments, Councillor Simpson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, thank you for this. I think it's really good, and I think some of the local board examples are really, really helpful. I suppose my question, because I think every councillor wants all our communities to be thriving, without a doubt. So for me, I think a lot of this hinges on implementation at local board level. So from a staff perspective, are we looking at the boards that potentially haven't done something? Because, because potentially every community can thrive at a higher level than it is, for whatever reason. What are we doing about sharing examples and encouraging them in their work programs to sort of put some of this into what they want to achieve over the next little while? I suppose that's my first question, and it ties to, because we put all these plans together, Madam Chair, but actually if we don't bring them in at the right time, i.e. with the local board plans and things like that, they don't have any, it sort of is, yes, it's a lovely idea, great idea, but actually we've already decided this is our work program over here, and we didn't realise about this and we haven't done anything, and it gets lost in the ether. So my second question is, if that's happened now, how can we front load that for the next political term to make sure that this is embedded as one of the things that every local board looks at as far as their draft local board plans go?
So I think for me that's definitely around that whole socialising the plan, so it's a fantastic opportunity once we update the plan that we can indeed do that whole socialising and making it like a business as usual. Yes, a plan that people can refer to, that can guide their work and guide that local board plan development, absolutely would be definitely my key objective out of this.
Yeah. And my second is how are we going to monitor this? Because, it's it's really hard. So I'm not sure. So how do we monitor it? Because we want to prove that by investing a whole lot of time, effort and money into this plan, we're actually making a difference and improving. So how can we prove that?
So for us, that is very much, I think also we'd probably say that's on us as well in CSP, in policy. It is our plan, and so it is up to us to monitor it, and we definitely recommend that we would actually report on it on an annual basis to make sure that we have an implementation plan in place that we can then actually monitor and deliver on.
So to that end, Madam Chair, I wonder if you would be so good as to consider potentially in B4, it's got improve evaluation, so we are clear on the impact we're making, improve evaluation and deliver because you actually want to not just improve it, but you actually want to prove that you've improved it.
That's right.
So improve and deliver an evaluation framework so we are clearer on the impact we are making. I mean, I don't want to suggest something that you're not happy with, but that's what you're saying, aren't you? Yeah. Are you okay with that, Madam Chair?
Councillor Collins.
Thanks, Chair. Just a few questions, and specifically to the action points. Action point 13, improve socioeconomic impacts through procurement. And I see there that we've got the framework. Just wondering if there, in the back of your mind, if there's thinking around particular targets in relation to procurement and particular social procurement.
I'm not aware of any particular targets around social procurement. I know that it is absolutely a key area of interest, and the TSI actually last week even had a conference around social procurement and delivering social outcomes through procurement, which was well attended. So it's definitely something that's front and foremost of mine, but I'm not aware of any specific targets around that.
And I only ask because I wonder if setting targets helps monitoring.
Right, yeah.
Whether they're low, high, medium, whatever. If we've got something to aim for, then we can tell ourselves, oh yeah, we got this far, and actually it worked out quite well. So, and I think TSI are doing that really well.
Yeah.
Cool. The second question is Action 17, the investigation around the living wage. I was wondering if that is, and I understand where we are as council and what we've approved internally, but as far as its relationship to procurement, if that is part of the consideration that's being made when we're talking procurement.
I think it should be. That's definitely something we can look into, yeah.
And is, in your view, being driven as something that is part of the consideration for procurement and contracted services?
At the moment, I'm not sure whether it is, but I think it really should be, yes.
Okay, choice. The other question I have is Action 24, foster employee volunteering. I see here, I see the numbers are kind of steady with people. I think that's a really good, because I know ANZ do it. I didn't realise till reading this report that we were doing it too. So I think it's great to encourage people to do that. I was just wondering if employees have the ability to negotiate who they spend the day with their manager, or do we have like a list of preferred providers? How does that work?
So there's a lot of freedom in terms of what kind of volunteering you can do. I personally do it at my local kindy, and I clean all the toys at the end of the school year, which is really good fun. But yes, and so that's in negotiation with your manager. Some teams do it as a team building exercise and do things like community planting, which is awesome.
Yeah.
But also people can do it individually and support their local schools or any organisation that they're interested in supporting, which is fabulous.
Yes, brilliant. Can I just say that that was one of the actions that I really enjoyed reading, Chair, and well done. And just finally, I know that in the summary, or the executive summary, it talks about the I Am Auckland document being the complementary or a partner strategy, because I didn't read a lot around youth and children in this document. Can I take for granted then that when the organisation is considering this document, how it forms a premise upon which they're acting, that I Am Auckland is just as important, because I am the youth liaison. I just want to make sure that we've got I Am Auckland on our radar when we're thinking.
Absolutely. So we definitely have I Am Auckland on our radar also, and we're also developing an implementation and evaluation framework for that at the moment. So yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Chair.
I just want to pick up your absolutely on point statement, Councillor Collins, about the social procurement. We have a monumental clash with the 17A review of the procurement policy and what we're saying in here. I would love to talk with you about how we continue that discussion. I think it's utterly critical that it aligns with the policies that we're talking about here today. Otherwise, we have one part of council working completely at odds with another part of council. It's absolutely critical.
Sure.
So
Thanks,
thank
Chair.
you. Councillor Hills.
Thank you, Chair. I want to speak to it too, but a couple of questions. And maybe it's a political discussion, but how does this, and it probably follows on from Councillor Collins' point, how do we get, or is it assumed that our CCOs follow this as well? Because I'm thinking in the, because I like lots of parts of this document. I remember it was built with community, and it's fantastic. But I think we, when we're looking at a $28 billion transport infrastructure plan we're about to kick off on, that should be riddled with young people and our and procurement, social procurement and all the environmental outcomes and involving community and everything. But we obviously throw it out there in our letters of expectation to the CCOs, but how do we, or is there any way we can socialise this with them and say, this is our policy, you should be using this and embedding it into your work too?
I mean, I think that is one of the areas of improvement that we've recognised, that we do need to take a stronger leadership role, and we're going to own that in terms of making sure that we are socialising with our CCOs, that they understand what it means within the context of their business and how we can help them to do that. Because I think there's, as Elizabeth mentioned, there's some real pockets of excellence within Auckland Council, but it's the traditional players, our community empowerment unit, the Southern Initiative, and it's how do we make this much more widespread across the whole council family. So that is the challenge that we're asking you to give us permission to take that leadership role much more strongly and socialise it, create the opportunities, and see that this is really an opportunity for all those parts of the business to actually deliver services that really, deliver on the communities that they're there to serve. So I think it's an opportunity and a challenge, and we're up for it.
And the other thing is, and it's probably more controversial, is how do your team and the other teams working with local boards go, is that, obviously you can't get involved in the political decisions, but how do you give them advice on, does that fit within, because talking on playgrounds and things that have been in the media lately, we as regional decision makers can say one thing, but local boards can do another. How do we get regional approach, and then, obviously you can't make anyone do anything, but how do we still make sure local boards have autonomy but are still trying to at least acknowledge the regional approach in some of these really important policies? Is it just as a note in their reports, or is it given as a suggestion? Because sometimes it might be just they didn't realise or they haven't seen this.
So again, I think it comes down to us taking a stronger leadership role and socialising it. But I actually think that, if you talk to every single local board, they all care deeply about their communities.
Oh, of course,
they do want their communities to thrive. So, we may be able to support them in that through this work. So by providing them opportunities to see where best practice is happening, where there's some great things going on, and how could they learn from that? Because I think that's one of the things, we're doing some great stuff. We're not always sharing that and learning from what's worked really well in one community could also work well in another community. So how can we create more opportunities like that? Because I actually think most local boards, really care about this sort of thing,
yes.
And want to do it.
Awesome. Member Blair.
Oh, kia ora. I just wanted to preface things that central government approach is kind of a universal approach to Māori at the moment, and I'd hate us to go down that way. So I'm just going to pick out a bit that a bit more targeting needs to go into your plan around Māori. Needs to include more content to how they can reverse some of the negative statistics around that you've pointed out between economic, social and health disparities. So can you identify ways in which you're going to respond to the Māori communities?
I think I totally agree, so that's definitely something that we put into our improvement area number 2. I think we'll probably do a similar approach to it that we did for the facility partnerships project. Would be my preference, is to actually have that as a separate stream of engagement and research to ensure that actually those voices are heard and that we get some clear outcomes for Māori in the new Thriving Communities Action Plan.
Yeah, because we'd look for a bit more engagement as well as the plan going forward. Because things like there's going to be increases in taxes coming up and how that's going to impact on the social and economic position of Māori in Auckland. So it'd be really important that we'd look forward to seeing what that content is going to be.
Yeah, and through you, Madam Chair, the Auckland Plan sets the clear direction around that as well in terms of how we're supporting Māori outcomes. So by this plan being updated to much more clearly face the Auckland Plan, that is another key driver for why we need to do what, you know, put more profile and content to Māori in this plan.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Okay, now if we have someone who's happy to move that, Councillor Collins, second, Councillor Filipaina. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Carried, thank you very much. Such good work. And just while we change over to our next subject, I just want to give big ups to Auckland Transport, actually. They are doing far better than we're doing in the social procurement side of things. Auckland Transport and NZTA doing better than us. So we just need to, you know, we are not a paragon of virtue. We've got a long way to go. So taking a deep breath, I just want to welcome Paul and Kataraina. And this issue, I think for Councillor Cooper and I in particular, has been a very, very long time coming to us, and we are just a critical step today, but hopefully a step so much closer to finally our marae out at Bethel's Te Henga. So this isn't a step that's going to absolutely make the process a done deal. Hopefully at the next finance meeting, that's when the next stage will happen. But I think for Te Kawerau Amaki, they're certainly waiting for us to take this step and to move forward. So with that, Paul Kataraina, whoever's going to present. Thank you. And just, I also want to acknowledge the staff. This has kind of languished to a certain extent for a long time. Councillor Cooper and I finally just jumped up and down and said we can't carry on any longer with this round and round in circles, and these staff have taken it by the scruff of its neck and actually taken it now to a place where we can make some hard, concrete decisions and move it on. So my gratefulness is extended. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the introduction. I think it's been a long day. Perhaps we could just answer questions.
Would be great. Well, I think, Councillor Cooper, would you like to move the recommendations? And I'm happy to second, and we'll take questions if need be. There are no questions. Councillor Walker and Councillor
Yeah, simple question. I'm just trying to get my head around the particular location, that's all. Was there a map in the item?
Through the Chair, no, there wasn't a map provided.
Go up to Lake Wainamu and turn left.
And just a related question, how did we acquire that land?
Waitakere bought it.
Okay, that's all I need to know.
Councillor Filipaina.
Just a comment, Chair, and obviously support it. Having a little part to play in getting this to where we are, I think it was good. And having, I think with Te Kawerau Amaki and Mangere, with Te Warena. So, you know, Chair, I just want to take my hat off to all the others that have been involved with Sir Bob. And like I said, just with yourself and Councillor Cooper in regards to getting this here to end up getting approved. So, yeah, congratulations to you both and people who have been brought into this, like John Hutton, like the other team. So, yeah, just wanted to acknowledge them.
Kia ora, Mr Deputy Chair, and that was very remiss of me not to acknowledge your role in going out to meet with Te Warena on several occasions. That's appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Member Brown.
So, just for clarity, for today's purposes, we're only looking at these two recommendations.
Yep.
However, in the background documents, it did encourage us to await the arrival of the Kawerau letter, which I've now got. Just so I'm clear, so this is step one of a number of steps. I.e., I just want to make sure that the issues that they have detailed in the letter 18 May will be in a timely moment captured and discussed with them.
Absolutely.
Okay,
So
thank
this
you.
is, you know, the complexity around the revocation of the reserve status is the critical part to actually getting this land able to be handed to Te Kawerau Amaki in a state that appeases them. They've been able to build the marae for the last, 10 years, but it just hasn't been, the underlying classification of the land hasn't been what Te Kawerau Amaki were happy with. We're now revoking the classification of this land, and it will now be fit for purpose for the expectations that Te Kawerau Amaki have.
Yep,
These issues are an ongoing and a much wider issue. So the next step will be at the finance meeting to agree the fee simple issue, the option 2, and from then on we can continue these wider discussions.
Option 2 and option 3?
We just want to, and this is the issue for the finance meeting. I'll just get
Okay,
Kat.
yep, no, that's fine, I accept that, thank you.
Okay, Kat, did you
We're
want
just
to?
going to clarify to the committee that the 3 options have different delegations. So option 1, the Waitakere Rangers Local Board has been delegated, so that's why a paper went to them. For option 2, this committee has delegated for the revocation, and the transfer is the Finance and Performance Committee. And then in option 3, the revocation, of course, is this committee, and the other part of the decision is Finance and Performance Committee.
Yep.
So sorry to be confusing,
No,
it's
I
just
understand, thank you.
the delegations are spread.
Kia ora.
So we're living in part 2.
Yep.
Okay, Councillor Cooper.
In Kawerau's letter, Madam Chair, around, sorry, I'm going to find it again now, so many tabs here. Well, it's really around the PO, and in the letter it talks about the fact that Te Kawerau want the PO back. But we've already resolved that part of the building in which the PO lies and the outside area will remain in public access.
That's why this is for a completely different, this is for a meeting with Te Kawerau Amaki. We'll discuss
I know, but we've
these
got the letter
issues.
here.
But
so-
I don't want us to deal with it now.
Oh, okay then. But I'm really concerned about, that letter outlines some things, and I'm not in the negotiation party, so I want to know
There is
what
no
is.
negotiation party, no. I think we just need
Whatever
to
it
be
is.
clear.
Okay.
Today is simply about the
Okay.
revocation
shouldn't have put that letter in there then.
of the site. I wasn't even aware that this was going to be discussed today, so
It's in the documents that we've been given on the hub.
as
so-
the background.
Okay.
But I don't see that is
My fault.
material to the revocation of sorry, my brain stopped working, of the reserve status. So let's just stick with that
Yeah, I
for
just
today.
wanted to, Madam Chair, to know, because that's set there, and that's a view, and that's one view. That's what because people could read that and go, well, that's going to happen. Well, we don't know yet, do we? So
No,
that's
we
what I
don't.
want to be clear about. This is in the public domain.
It is.
It's still to be discussed.
It is still to be discussed. There will be a process, I think as Member Brown said, that we'll sit with Te Kawerau Amaki and talk these wider issues through. The focus over this meeting and then the finance meeting is to deal with the issue of the underlying status of the land and the process by which this land then goes to Te Kawerau Amaki. Then the rest of the issues make sense, because at the moment they're just all left hanging.
Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Councillor Watson.
Yeah, thanks. No, I'm just trying to take in what you're saying there in terms of what we're voting for. I was just seeking a little bit more information. We've been reading through the timeline with Waitakere City Council, and just the thing I was just wanting a little bit of more detail was on the condition, and I don't know if this is the right time to make it. I'm assuming it is. The condition that there be provision for the community to have the opportunity of input into the scale of facilities. So where does that fit in all what we're doing?
Through the chair, that is one of the things that has really been answered through the unitary plan process. So if you have a look in the report, we've identified in paragraph 48 the process gone through the unitary plan. So actually it is zoned for marae, it's a special purpose zone for marae purpose. The design, the scale, all of those bulk and location requirements have already been decided through the unitary plan process. So most marae and papakainga activities are permitted on the site as of now.
So we're not changing any of that. As I said before, Te Kawerau Amaki could have built their marae and have been able to for the last 10 years. So the local community are well aware of that, and there's no change in that. This is just the underlying status of the land that is of critical importance to Te Kawerau. Okay, we're there. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Kia ora, thank you very much. That's a